I am Andrew Breeze of the University of Navarre in Pamplona, Spain, and I send my best wishes to all of you at the conference in Mascara. I wish you every possible success. In the next 20 minutes or so, I want to give a talk on a subject which links Wales within Britain and Spain, where I live, and the Arab world, and particularly Maghreb, in a historical incident that took place nearly 1,000 years ago. So we should be linking up Europe and North Africa, the Arab world. And the question involves a manuscript in the National Library of Wales in Aberystwyth, which refers to events in Maghreb, refers to events in the Arab world, and particularly the Almoravid dynasty, which ruled that part of the world and then invaded Spain nearly, as I say, 1,000 years ago. We start off with Wales, and then we go on to Spain, and then we finish with the Arab countries, their peoples, and their civilization. First of all, then, Wales. In Wales, which is the part of Britain over here on the west, a small country, Wales is a country with a strong literary tradition and its own language, the Welsh language, which is a Celtic language. And I want to refer to an old manuscript which is in the National Library of Wales. Here we have a picture of it. You see this big white building on top of the hill in Aberystwyth in West Wales, which contains millions of books and thousands of manuscripts. It has more books in the Welsh language than anywhere else in the world. So we start off with the National Library of Wales in Aberystwyth. And one of these manuscripts is called the Book of Taliesin. I have a facsimile of it here. You can see the title, the Book of Taliesin, or Llyfr Taliesin in the Welsh language. It was written about 800 years ago, and it contains some of the oldest poetry in the Welsh language. And here I reproduce a facsimile of some of the poems. It contains nothing but poetry on its pages. One of these poems has been a puzzle and a mystery and an enigma for Celtic scholars over the centuries. And quite recently, a scholar at Aberystwyth, the University of Aberystwyth, has published an edition of these poems, or at least those of them that are prophecies. And one of these poems contains reference to a mysterious place called Gavis, and nobody has been quite sure where that is. And the poem refers to invaders, refers to hostile soldiers, warriors, assailants, who are coming across the sea, supposedly from that part of the world, even to attack Britain. And I'm going to read a few lines of this poem, including this mysterious reference to Gavis. The poem begins, "In the name of God, of wise charity, a myriad host of cruel violence shall conquer Britain, the preeminent island, the men of the land of Asia and of the land of Gavis, a people whose intent is not known, a race with lances and spears, sea raiders, their tunics trailing what others are like them in their hostile action. Europeans, Arabians, Saracens, the ruler of them shall be stirred in the face of a lord from Britain to evoke the terror he provokes. It is not a skilful king of great speech who'd see what I saw of the foreigners," and so on. And then the poem more or less breaks off. And this poem has been a mystery. Nobody has been quite clear what the reference is to. But the crucial point here, the clue for us all here, is that word Gavis. Because I think with a little bit of ingenuity, we can change that word and recognize it as Cadiz. Cadiz, as we say in English, the great city and port in southwest Spain. And nearly 1,000 years ago, Cadiz, pronounce it as you will, was very much in the news. If we turn to another ancient document, this is a translation of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which gives events that happened in England up to about 800 years ago, 900 years ago. And in its entry for the year 1086 in our calendar, reports on the death of William the Conqueror, who had conquered England just 20 years before. But it also has what we should now call some foreign news and so on. It refers to events going on the continent of Europe. And it has this particular entry. It says this: "It happened in Spain that enemies came and raided against the people of Spain, and they took much of Spain under their control. But the king of Spain, who was called Alfonso, he went everywhere into every land of Europe, and he begged for support. And support came to him from every land which was Christian. And soldiers came and travelled, and they drove away all that foreign people, and they reconquered Spain through the support of God." Well, this bit of foreign news, like foreign news to this day, is not entirely accurate. In fact, it is far from accurate, because far from regaining control of Spain, Alfonso was unable to make much impact upon the invaders who came there. And Al-Andalusia, Al-Andalus, as I think you would call it, remained a centre of Moorish civilization and culture for another 400 years and so on. However, this entry in an English chronicle helps us with our Welsh poem. Because if we go back to its text and look at it, we can be quite sure that the reference is to the invasion of southwest Spain, of Andalusia, in the year 1086. The events of that year were dramatic. In the early part of 1086, in our calendar, Alfonso, the king of Castile, had been besieging the town of Toledo, I believe Toletwa, as you call it in Arabic, in the center of Spain. And he had been holding the Moors within it under his control for several months. And just to give us an idea, here is a picture of Toledo by the great artist El Greco, painted just over 400 years ago. And you can see, if I may say so, it still looks to me like an Arab city. If you look at it in detail, you can see at the very highest point there is the Alcázar, etc., which is a good Arab word, etc., a building that still stands, a fortification, a stronghold, and so on. So there was Toledo. Toledo had been a center of Arab culture, but in the year 1086, in the European calendar, the King of Castile, Alfonso, besieged it, and in the month of May, he was able to capture it. So Alfonso had good reason to congratulate himself. He had been successful. He had pushed Spanish control of the Iberian Peninsula a little bit to the south. But there was to be a dramatic reaction. In Morocco and other parts